Well, hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. I'm here with Ricky Brule tonight, if you can believe that.
I'm back. I'm back with about 100 more gray beard hairs. And a Santa Claus over here. Right.
All right. It's been a while, really,
Yeah.
and that we since haven't had you on here for a
Yeah.
bit, but
Feels good to be
you know we've been
on.
we've been getting the job done
hmm
though.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing fantastic.
So, but no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do two of our favorite episodes, and I'm not saying that all the guests aren't our favorite people because they are,
hmm
but we had to pick two because we're going to over Christmas and over New Year's. I'm actually going to Alaska tomorrow, and Ricky's a little bit busy himself,
Yeah, we got a
and so we thought we'd enjoy the holidays.
yeah. Yeah. And then we figure let's give everybody our two favorite episodes, right? Like let's for the new people here who haven't had the opportunity to go back. We've got a couple of episodes that had the most engagement out of anybody, the most curiosity and questions coming from people. So I think that's what really kind of helped make the decision.
Yes. So, our first episode is going to come on the Tuesday, actually Christmas Eve. They're going to be Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So, anyway, excuse me, but our first episode is going to be our first episode with a guest.
That's right.
It's going to be Fiona Pierce, and she had quite a story. And I mean, it's interesting because it's one of our most popular, and it was our first one.
Yeah.
And and Fiona's story is kind of a Christmas story in itself.
hmm Yeah, it is.
It wasn't September. It wasn't December. It was September. But to save a person's life and to be in the right place at the right time, it, there is some, there is some miracles working there. We'll just say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Defied all odds without a doubt.
And then her outlook on life throughout the episode was just amazing too, and it not only affected me, and I know it affected Ricky,
Yeah.
but it affected people that were driving down the road and they said we were bawling,
Yeah.
and the energy that people gave was amazing too, because I think you look at life and you say, what would I do in those situations?
hmm
And I hope I would try. I don't know if I know everything to do, but I mean, I've taken CPR classes, but I'm just saying, depending on what situation you're in.
hmm
So, yeah. So Fiona is going to be our first guest on Christmas Eve. So I don't know if we do that we call this the best of, but it's pretty doggone good.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely jump in. It's an episode I'll never forget. Obviously, it was the first one. So we were the excitement. Going into launching our first episode was pretty exciting, and for it to be Fiona, and it's still, I think, probably our most listened to episode up to this point. Although it is also the oldest episode that we have, so naturally it would be.
Yeah.
But still, right from the get go, she had the most listens right off the bat. So, yeah, it's a great episode. Definitely gotta check it out if you haven't heard it before, and give us some feedback. Send us a message. Let us know how you feel, how it made you feel, if it had any impact on your life. Let us know.
Yeah, and you may say, we're running a rerun here on hiatus or whatever you want to call the holiday season, but these two episodes I listened to two or three times after we put them out, and I listened to them two or three times before we put them out. So, and they keep on affecting me because I'm one of these people that went, how did I miss that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You listen to it so many times, but how do I miss that? And it's just one of those amazing things. And so, I mean, if you want to have a good feeling, motivational, uplifting Christmas episode, Fiona is it, because that story will touch my life for the rest of my life. So, anyway, I want to just say, everybody have a Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas, everybody.
and we will talk to you later. Welcome to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. I'm Rick Hanson, and we will be talking about living, not dying. We're all in this adventure together, and we will be interviewing people who inspire us to live our best lives. People with various backgrounds who will walk us down the trails they took to not die rusty. Adventure in life are many things to many people. It could be a sprint or an endurance race, but with each adventure, we become a better version of us. We hope you keep chasing those dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. My guest today is one that I met at Total Archery Challenge in Bozeman. In Big Sky.
Big Sky. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Big Sky.
Our friend Ashley said, I have this friend. Can she stay in her room? And then I said, oh yeah, that's cool, And anyway, I'm interviewing Fiona Missy Pierce. She's from New Zealand, and she's just an all-around adventurer and just cool girl.
Well, thank you.
Well,
Thank you for having me. That's very nice of you to set it up that way.
well,
I'm humbled to be here.
It's true, and like I said, this is a podcast about positivity, and you exude positivity.
Well, thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
I try to.
Yeah.
I think people are. I actually had this conversation with my colleague the other day in the car. I think certain people are very sensitive to energy, whether you believe in this or not. I'm a Pisces, so I think would like to think that I'm in tune with some emotional goings on, but I'm also very much an empath, and I have had to later in life work through the understanding that I am just very sensitive to people's energies. And I grew up with a brother who maybe was a little bit glass half empty, and I find that is very taxing on me. I feel that I like absorb people's energy. So I too, I think, try to surround myself with people who have a glass half full mentality, because I find negative energy, I take that on, I feel it very strongly, and so I think I've had to learn that you're very conscious and cognizant of the people that you surround yourself with, and I think folks who exude positivity and try to look at any situation with that glass half full is very important.
Well, yes, and I think that's why we connected. It was like we were long lost friends, and we just met each other. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You came into the room like a ninja. The night we wake up and there's a New Zealander on the couch.
I said, "How did you get in here?" Well, I came in at midnight. You didn't hear me. I snuck right past you.
But I agree with you there, because I've kind of started shedding friends that don't have that half full positivity, because all it does is drag you down.
Yeah.
And
I realize also, I realize not everyone is always going to be rays of sunshine and positivity and like I too go through ebbs and flows, but I think it's understand that if someone's truly not adding value, everyone goes through hard times. Like I'm never going to cut someone because I think, oh, you're in a bad mood or you're having a tough time. Like I'm very much an empath, but I think it's that long-term value and just positive mindset and way you kind of like look at experiences and situations. And I like always try to find a silver lining in everything. And I think that's important.
I do too. Yeah. I really think that's important myself, because like I said, I want to be around positive people. I want to be around that exuding of energy, that getting to you, since we become friends. I see, this is funny, because I think we were on the mountain and we were talking about shadows or something.
Oh yeah, I have my little shadow play game that I
Yes.
play.
And we were talking about that because I think I was taking a picture of a shadow myself, and then we
Mhm.
started talking about shadows. But it's interesting how you meet people that see things like that,
Mhm.
and it's the small things in life. And then that's what
Totally.
when I
Mhm.
talked about in my the our one podcast that we talked about what Don't Die Rusty is.
Mhm.
It's about seeing those little things,
Oh, sure.
and it's also about having fun and about seeing the positives and then trying to pick people up. I try to pick people up. I
Mhm.
mean, you had never shot with us till you
No,
got the big sky.
I was the ring-in. I can't believe I was the ring-in that was allowed the opportunity to shoot with such a VIP group and get first access to the mountain. I was welcomed. I was very fortunate.
But do you remember how we were coming down the mountain and everybody's like getting serious? And
Mhm.
it's that happens on like the second day
Sure.
because you're running so hard to
Mhm.
to get everything in such a little small amount of time because I want to talk to you, I want to talk to this person and
Sure.
that person. And
Mhm.
we're coming down the mountain and Ashley says to me, she said, "This is getting way too serious." And then I threw down my cap and started yelling and screaming, and it kind of got people to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah,
And it
for
was
sure.
it all in jest.
If anyone needs the video, I have the video of this moment. I thought, oh my gosh, Rick has lost his mind. Something awful's happening. He's throwing his hat. And yeah, but you're right. It broke the ice a little bit and reminds you that, hey, we're out here having fun. And honestly, that I don't know what you call it, that target, that shot that we were shooting. I feel like sometimes and it's an important reminder in all things in life that like you took stock of that moment. You're like, I'm skirting. We were skirting the Yellowstone Club, which is
Yeah,
possibly one of the prettiest areas in Montana. And you
yeah,
look around and the wildflowers are blooming, and you're walking like in areas that most people don't even go. And you're like, man, like things are not that bad. Like we're in this area right now with good people. We're out enjoying, like flinging some arrows, having fun. You're right. Like it's important to not get too serious in
yes,
some of those moments and actually just realize like, hey, I'm having fun with really good people in a
yes.
phenomenal area.
And that's, I just hope people can see. I preface this, I'll probably preface this in every episode I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a big believer in there is there's there's happiness, but there's joy.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be happy, but the joy part comes with the people. That's where I said the people I surround myself with is more joyful. They make me happy, but they
Mm-hmm.
can take you to some joyful moments
Sure.
that you'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's the one thing I want to get back into. I mean, we're kind of going off track here because I never even introduced you
Yeah.
properly.
I'm just the ninja who snuck into your hotel room one night. It's not that bad. It's not how it sounds.
And now you're the ninja that snuck into this podcast
Yeah.
episode.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But but what do you do now? And can you give us a little biography of a short biography about where you've been and what you've done?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you the abridged version, the 30,000 foot. So, um, called me a Kiwi. I'm actually half Kiwi. I have a Kiwi mother, born and raised in Los Angeles, California, actually, until I was young. My grandma still lives there. But I think, my brother and I were young kids and we grew up in Venice Beach, which
Mm-hmm.
now is the cool area. But at the time, like I remember there was a kid who was like 6 or 7 years old who was coming into school and got found with drugs on him. And it turns out that he was dealing drugs in our elementary school for his older brother who was in a gang. And it was just this whole weird moment where my dad was like, man, LA is not the place for kids to grow up. Let's go. You're from New Zealand. You've got some family there. Let's take the kids to New Zealand and grow and have them grow up there. Which honestly, I think looking back, like the lifestyle that it afforded us
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity to get into the outdoors and do all those things and find that for myself. I don't come from a family who's really interested in the outdoors. Sometimes I'll tell them about an adventure I'm going on and they're like, what in the world like compelled you to do this? Like this is not something that's, it's just interesting to me. But yeah, so we moved over there when I was young and lived there until I finished college, and then I had the intention of being a professional athlete through college and ended up injuring myself before I could go on a scholarship. And so now I'm a washed up wannabe athlete. So went to college, did branding. Again, growing up playing sport, you see Nike as like the ultimate brand machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to joke that, one day I'm going to work for Nike, and when they come calling, I'll leave New Zealand. And sure enough, got an opportunity to move to the States and work for Nike. And I had to go home and tell my boss, who I'd been joking for 4 or 5 years, that if Nike ever calls, I'm leaving. I said, well, funny, I manifested it because I got a call from Nike, and here's my notice. I'm leaving. I'm buying a one-way ticket. So he's like, well, fair, you put it out there. So anyway,
Yep.
I came over here. So I've been in the States for 6 years now. Moved to Oregon, was there for 3 years,
Yep.
2.5 years, working for Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Loved the coast there, but wasn't involved in sort of like outdoorsy sort of industry that I am now. It wasn't until I moved to Utah for another job opportunity that I actually, part of what I was doing was brand marketing and sponsorship and partnerships. And one of the first meetings that I had in that role was on a Saturday morning, 8 a.m. with Mr. Sean DeGray.
Really?
From Total Archery Challenge. Yeah. So we were coming on board as a title sponsor.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I met the Total Archery and kind of got looped into the fold there, and figured, well, hey, I'm doing all this archery stuff. Like, I'd love to take it up. And the company that I worked for had an archery lane out back, so it was kind of like a fun little lunchtime activity. We'd all go out and take a break from our office and fling some arrows, and there was something quite meditative about that, but also quite social as well. Again, you're taking a moment of reprieve and leaving your computer, which sometimes it'll drag you in and you can be sitting in front of your desk. But there was a nice moment where, like, you know what, we're going to take half an hour and we're all going to go out and shoot arrows and do that as a group, which was really fun. And so yeah, been in Utah for coming up 4 years.
Holy moly.
And if you had told me before I moved there that I would live in Utah ever in my life, I would have laughed at you. I was very naive and thought of Utah as like the 5 national parks, the Red Rocks. And I thought, I'm an ocean kid. I grew up like in the ocean, fishing, diving, all that sort of stuff. I thought, I'll do a year in Utah because, it's a good job opportunity. It ticks a box. I'll say I did it. And I landed in a spot in Salt Lake City, right at the base of the mountains, the Wasatch Front. And I just fell in love instantly with the mountains, which is something or a landscape that I had never really spent time in. And yeah, bought a house in 4 years. So again, if you told me I'd been there for more than a year, I would have laughed. But 4 years, and as I said, just fell in love with the mountains, hiking, backpacking, hunting, taking my dog up there, whole new appreciation for alpine lakes and rivers. So yeah, I've been here for, coming up 7 years.
That's amazing because I grew up in central South Dakota where there are no mountains.
Yes.
And you grew up on the ocean.
Yeah.
And it is amazing the different lifestyle when you get to those mountains, how they draw you in.
My gosh.
Because I live in the Black Hills now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you a funny story because I went. I mean, you were giving me heck earlier about being in Australia, but
yeah.
growing up in South Dakota, and then you watch the movie Jaws. I was just about petrified to even put my toe in the ocean, and I was on the western side. So it's just like that doesn't draw me. You know what I mean? The water doesn't draw me, but the mountains do.
There's something mad. I mean, there's a famous quote. I can't remember who it was. The mountains are calling and I must go. I forget who penned that line.
Yeah.
But I think there's something like truly in that I would have told you unequivocally I was an ocean kid, like absolutely. And I feel very much so that has shifted. I think there's something quite magical about being out in the mountains and, backpacking by yourself and the solitude that you can have there. But it's also very humbling, just the magnitude of those mountains. I love flying / driving into Salt Lake because, you have these enormous mountain ranges at either side. And I think there's something special. I look out my back door every day and there's just the Wasatch Mountains there. And that's the Mount Olympus. And that's a view that, every day. I don't get tired of that. I love looking at it. And I love being able to get up out there and enjoy it. And there's so much adventure, as we were talking about, that you can have.
Yes. So Fiona has, well, you got an award for, was it from the governor?
I got the governor's award and a sheriff's award in the same.
So
Yeah.
this is quite a story, and I hope you stay here and listen to this, because Fiona, you just tell the story,
Sure.
if you will.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I look at you. Look, this is the other thing about positivity. Because I look, what would I do if a shooter walked into something, or if something? What would I do in an emergency situation?
Which are all situations that you don't think of until like it presents itself.
N-
We're here in Vegas right now, and a couple days ago there was a mass shooting less than a mile from where we are now.
it,
And it's these moments where you're like, oh yeah, shoot, what would I do?
exactly, and you got into a moment. It's not a shooting, thank God, but I mean,
Correct.
it was an accident.
Literally everything changed. It's so cliche, but in a moment. So again, 30,000 foot view. I'll take you to the
Yeah,
top of
yeah,
the
yeah.
story. So, my first hunting season last year, my first archery hunting season, I took a week off work. I'd been scouting. I was going to get my first archery buck. I was committed to backpacking way back in there. Um, so it was in August of last year, and we'd been doing a lot of hiking, and we didn't have a tremendous amount of luck seeing a lot of animals where we were. And we thought, hey, let's shift positions. Like we'd seen some animals kind of go over this ridge, and it would be a heck of a hike to push in from where we were, but there was a road that we could sort of like come out of where we were, circumnavigate, and maybe find a better area. So packed up everything, hiked back to my truck, and we're kind of taking this pretty rough dirt road, rocky mountainous road out. And just so happened that as I kind of rounded this corner, there was a rock, and it must have been 3 or 4 inches, just happened to be sticking out the side of this little turn, that just got the sidewall of my tire at the right area, sliced it, and my car just, you hear the
Yep.
noise and you
Oh,
know exactly. And I was
I've
like,
been there.
oh no. So that was a real bummer. Went to change my spare, and the one tool that I needed to get those nuts off
Yep.
was missing from the toolkit.
Really?
Yeah. So again, I was annoyed and sitting
You know,
there, and we'd seen someone had their car parked at a different trailhead, and anyway, waited hours for them to come out, and luckily they had a breaker bar and
y-
could kind of help. And
yep.
put on my spare, and kind of limped out slowly on a spare, back into some area where we had some service. Um, and as luck would have it, my tire size was special order. So nowhere in this little town had the tires that I needed. So had to call the trip halfway, unfortunately, limp back, as I said, down to Salt Lake City
Hmm.
to get them to order a tire, and so they could switch my tire out the next day and come back out and try and finish that second half of the week. So at this point, it's frustrating, it's annoying, best laid plans thrown out the window. Get down there, and my neighbor, whom I was hunting with, actually said, hey, there's another area that is much closer than where we were. I've never been up there, but we could drive up and scout around. We've got the afternoon now. Like let's I can take my wife and 2 little babies, and we can just go for a drive. It's like, great, let's load them up. We've got, we're waiting. On the whole drive there was a series of about 4 or 5 things that happened that at the time were like minor inconveniences, or like put us back like a minute or two. Like the kids, we got somewhere and the kids wanted to go somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like just little frustrating things that at the time you're like, oh, that's kind of annoying, but all right, time's ticking,
Yep.
whatever. Anyway, all of this happens, and we get out to Smith and Morehouse Reservoir, which is up in the hills of out of Salt Lake. And it's a dirt road. You're going way back past this reservoir. There's no service. And we're chatting away, laughing. It's a beautiful day, and we're going to get up and try and find some animals, and it's beautiful country and the reservoir. And we're driving, and we round this corner on the dirt road, which is kind of around where the boat ramp is at the reservoir, and suddenly see this woman in the middle of the road on her hands and knees just wailing. I thought, my God, what's going on? we pulled up slowly, and she leapt up and slammed her hands on the front of the truck and said, "Help, help." And I said, "Oh my God," like wind down the window, and she says, "Help, does anyone know CPR?" And my immediate
Oh my
reaction
gosh.
was, "Ah, shit."
Why?
I do.
Yeah, I hear ya.
Okay. And I thought, okay, chat, like, keep the kids in the car because he's got little
Mm,
kids. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm running into.
yeah.
So, also a little bit of background. For 5 years, I was in the New Zealand Coast Guard.
Oh, you
So I
were.
was an ocean kid. I forgot
Ah.
to mention that. In New Zealand, the Coast Guard is not military
Yeah.
like it is here. Um, it's all volunteer run. But we're an island, so we're like everyone's on the water. So it's kind of funny that like one of the busiest organizations in search and rescue for the water is actually just purely volunteer. But I joked that 50% of the time we were the ambulance of the ocean, 50% of the time the tow truck, because people are getting their anchors stuck or running out of gas or something, and so we're towing them back in.
So how does that work? Because like you have volunteer firemen. Do you
Mhm.
like they have a call for a boat or I mean a
Yeah,
wreck?
they gave
Something
me
on
a
the ocean.
pager.
Yeah.
And I'm of the generation that did not grow up with pages. And I said, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? It did, towards the time I was leaving, they went with a slightly less antiquated form of technology, and we actually went to an app on our phones that was essentially a pager. So, but yeah, if we got an emergency call out, our pagers would all go off, and
You just
we'd report like who could make it. And I've walked out of a couple business meetings where I said, "Sorry, I gotta go," and run and get
and,
on the boat.
and so you just run, get on the boat, and you're heading to the
Yeah.
emergency.
Yeah,
Right,
we'll
right.
get the sit rep and find out where we're going. So yeah, I'd done marine search and rescue for a lot of years, and worked with the EMTs and done training there. And so this woman says, "Does anyone know CPR?" And I
Hmm.
thought, ah, shit.
Yeah.
And I immediately go to my mom. Even told me, she's like, "Don't get involved. You're in America. They might sue you if something goes wrong." So again, in New Zealand, you're not the people that sue people. There's not that concern. So she was always super worried.
Yeah.
But of course, you think, "Oh my gosh, something's wrong. I got to jump in." So keep the kids, like, don't let them see what's going on. I have no idea what's going on. I'm in my hunting boots. I have no idea what's going on. Run down to the boat ramp and see a bunch of people standing around and crying and whatever. I see a guy in the water, probably about shoulder deep, and he's struggling to get out of the water. Again, I have no idea what's going on. And I jump in the water, run into the water, and I see he's pulling a body out of the water. And he was obviously exhausted, struggling. I took
Yep.
over, and I see that it's a kid. It's a
Oh,
baby.
really?
Not a baby, but like a little kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I don't want to be morbid or gross, but it was a dead kid, like very dead. And unfortunately, I've been involved in a lot of water recoveries, and you know what someone who's been under the water too long looks like. And I thought, my gosh, this is awful. The families beside themselves. I don't want the kids to see. There's nothing that I can do. I check pulse, not breathing, blue, no heartbeat. So I start doing CPR thinking that, oh, this is all I can do until like someone comes and calls time of death, but we're not sitting here with a family. Like I'm going to
Exactly.
do something to at least keep busy. And I said, "God, what's happened? What's wrong?" And he'd been under the water for 10 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. So another gentleman had been there before me, a kayaker. I guess what had happened, family was enjoying day on the reservoir. Dad pulls the truck around with kids, goes to load the kayak in the back of the truck, and he gets out and car rolls into the water down the boat ramp
Oh,
and goes out like 20 foot and gets
oh
submerged.
my
They
gosh.
got two kids out, but this one kid got stuck in there. He'd been under there for 10 minutes, and this poor little baby was, blue as anything. And so it was awful. And dad's yelling, like, "Oh, you got to save my kid. Are you going to save him? His mom's going to kill me." And I was like, oh man, like I'm doing all that I can, but I'm not going to say it. But I'm like,
Oh,
this,
definitely.
this baby is gone. So I yell out, I'm like, thinking we got to get the sat phone. Somehow someone gets service, which never happens here, first of all. So they managed to call, and they said they're going to send an ambulance. And I said, oh my God, they got to send a life flight. Like an ambulance on these dirt roads. It's not, tell them they got to send a medevac. Like they got to send a life flight. They said,
Hmm.
okay, they're going to send it. longest 20 minutes of my life, I think, performing CPR on this kid with the family around. And at one point, my watch on my hand, I'm also still half in the water. I pull this kid out and put him on the boat ramp and just start doing compressions and CPR. My legs are still in the water, but I was like, what are you going to do? I still have a scar there.
I see that.
Yeah, my watch like started rubbing and like cut my hand. And I told my buddy when he finally came down, he got his kids situated. I said, I'm gonna count you in. I said, I need you to switch out with me. He said, I don't know how to do CPR. I said, I'll tell you, I'll count you. I need to take my watch off. So anyway, count him in and he takes over for a bit and I sit my watch there. And at about 10 minutes of doing this, like again, I feel this kid's ribs break. He's so small, but again, that's how you know you're doing CPR right.
Yeah.
So I'm horrified. This is so awful of a situation. 10 minutes, and I start to see he had a little t-shirt on. And he was so blue when he came out. But I start to see color like move up his neck. It was the weirdest thing. And I kind of have this moment of like, oh my gosh. And then it's this moment back in reality that, oh, you're just pumping. You're physically pumping the blood around and just move it. Like that's just color. Like that's nothing. At 20 minutes, and again, I have my watch there, so I know. At 20 minutes, I start to hear the helicopter. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like this is like longest 20 minutes. At that moment, the weirdest thing, and the only way I can describe it is I kind of looked up and I felt, the dirt kick up and kind of go in my eyes, and I looked away and I felt what I can only describe as like a weird like suction, like a death rattle or something under my hands. And I looked down and I was like, holy smokes, I think this kid's breathing. And I was like, no. And checked his pulse. And I, again, excuse the like vulgar language, but I yelled at these guys as they're pulling out of the helicopter. I was like, holy shit, you guys, I think I got a pulse. And they're like, no. Come over, put the machine on. And they said, they're like, he's breathing. This kid is like, he's got his heart rate back. Which doesn't make any medical sense. Like 10 minutes submerged in this water, this kid's drowned, 20 minutes of not breathing. That's 30 minutes of like, no oxygen to the brain. Anyway, they load him up. It was all very quick and took the helicopter and left. And I kind of had this moment where I thought, oh my gosh, we brought it back for at least the opportunity that this child will be able to then save perhaps 7 other children, because they'll be able to maybe share his organs with other kids. And that was kind of the solace that I could take from it. But it was so weird because you go into that situation and it's all adrenaline, and then they're gone in an instance. And we're just sitting on the boat ramp kind of going, oh shoot, we were just going to go look for deer.
And now I bet you're exhausted. I mean, just because of all the
adrenaline dump, yes. Like your body's exhausted. And again, the kids had no idea. It's amazing. You put an iPad in front of them and these 5-year-olds sit there and have no idea that it's helicopters and ambulance, which was a miracle in itself. But anyway, so we kind of go out of that situation. It's a very quiet drive home because we're kind of like, trying to process what just happened. It was awful, traumatic, and don't want to talk about it in front of the kids who, thank goodness, were oblivious and weren't scarred by it. Another child.
Yeah.
And we kind of get home and, I pour a very, very, very large glass of wine. Think, man, what just happened? Because it truly, like, you went from an instance of like having fun and like, laughing and joking to like everything changing in an instant, and like having to be on. And I talk about like all of those instances that went into like prior for us being there and being frustrating. I'm not religious in any way. I grew up Catholic, so my mom's really horrified that I say that.
I grew up Catholic too.
Okay, yeah, we're inherently just guilty about it. Yeah, but I do believe that, like, in this whole thing, like, I truly believe that we were put there for a reason. Like, we went through all of those inconveniences, I would say, like my tire slashing. I wasn't meant to be there. There were so many instances that put us back like 30 seconds or a minute, that if we'd been 2 minutes earlier or 5 minutes earlier, we would have zipped right past them up on the flats out of service and never have seen them. You know what I mean? And there were like 10 people there, none of whom knew what to do, none of whom knew CPR. We just happened to drive by in the secluded area at the right time.
It's interesting that, though, because I believe in that too.
Yeah.
And and it's amazing. Like you think about like those little things. Like when sometimes I stop and take a picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then you drive down the road, and like I haven't been in that situation like
Yeah, this is
that, but
extreme.
there's other situations like if I would have been like 10 minutes earlier,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have seen whatever I seen, or I wouldn't have been able to help that person or
correct.
whatever, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's just interesting that, I mean, how timing works, how all that stuff works,
Oh,
that little things.
absolutely. And, so that I'm like, man, I guess we were there for a reason. And again, I don't necessarily think that I'm religious, but I would say that I'm spiritual. And I've
Mm-hmm.
started to think that like things happen for a reason. Anyway, to kind of round out that story, it had been like sort of 5, 6 days post that. And I struggled with it because I'd seen,
Yeah.
you see a body and like it's a baby and like the whole thing was very traumatic. And I
Did
was
you know, did in that 5 or 6 days, had you heard anything?
Well, so I the only thing that I knew was it was kind of big news. So like
Mm-hmm.
they would report on it, and like I would every now and then see an update in the news, like, hey, like he's in critical condition and he hasn't woken up, and uh, it was I think it was 6 or 7 days later. I got a phone call. I was working remote from home. I was sitting at my like office desk, and I get a phone call. It was late in the afternoon from a number I didn't know, and it was the Park City Sheriff's Office.
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "I just wanted to ring and tell you." I like get like chills saying it. He's like, "I just wanted to ring and tell you this little boy's mother just called me, and he just walked himself out of the hospital, completely unaffected by anything,
Unaffected.
unaffected. Thank God, no knowledge of the
Yeah.
situation, like had no memory, but completely brain function 100% normal, just like a normal kid." And I just kind of, I think I froze because I was like, he said, "Hello, are you there? Are you okay?" I said, "Oh, there is never a moment in the last 7 days that I thought I would ever get this phone call.
Hmm.
Like, there's no way that kid was
Yeah.
dead, like 100%." And he said, "The family wants to meet you." And which was really nice. So, a couple days later, I went out to the sheriff's office and we walked in, and there's this kid whom I'd seen in a very different state a
Yeah.
week ago with his little cousin throwing a ball, running around with a little puppy because he just got a puppy.
Huh.
And I immediately froze, like a physical,
Yeah.
visceral reaction. And my friend who was with me said, "Are you okay?" "Oh, I know what it means now to feel like you've seen a ghost." Like, it was just a weird, I was like, this kid, there is no reason that he should be running around. Chatted to the family, and again, it was very generous of them to give me a life-saving award from the sheriff's
Yeah.
office, and that's kind of what we were up there for. But again, I think I'm not religious, but I also in that moment think that I'm very much spiritual because I believe we were put there for a reason to be able to help. I believe that that kid's time, it was not his time. Clearly, there was some guardian angel or something looking after him because he defied the odds of everything. Even the EMT that spoke there said, "I've never seen this. Like in 30 years of doing this, like a situation like this where someone can walk away 7 days completely unaffected." So
Heck, you're getting me emotional, eh?
it's yeah, I mean, truly, like I he has a second chance, and again, I'm humbled that I was able to. I had no skin in the game, right? His
No.
family were emotional. I was just there, and luckily, I had experience and training to be able to put that into practice, and I was able to perform, I suppose, in that situation, but highly stressful, and traumatic, and but like amazing to have been a part of, and as I say, humbled to like hopefully give that child an opportunity to. I hope he goes on and changes the world.
Well, see, and that's where I was going to go with this, because that's what I want Don't Die Rusty to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because not only did you affect the people, the child,
Mm-hmm.
you affect the people around you.
Sure.
And that's what a Don't Die Rusty person is.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good person, not worrying about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
jumping in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you affected, just like I said, I don't think you affected just a kid. I think you affected the people around it, of course, at that time.
Yeah.
And then I kind of knew the story. I mean, I've watched, some of your social media here and there
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, but I didn't know the whole story. And didn't want to pry, but then I walked up to you and said, I want to
I want
pry.
to know. And look, it's that was August of last year. I think it probably took 6 months to be able to be able to talk about without getting kind of emotional, because it also didn't make sense to me.
Mm.
And I'm a very type A person, like to find reason and logic and everything. And it took me a while to actually realize that, like, hey, let go of that. Like, you're not going to find a reason for this other than it wasn't his time, and I hope he goes on and affects something, and you were just meant to be there. And I like to find a reason for things and logic as to why he survived, why this. And I'm like, oh, there is no reason. Like, you just have to let that go, and just, I suppose, have a contentment that, yeah, like you said, I'm incredibly humbled to have been able to hopefully positively impact a complete stranger in a way that,
Yeah.
what has changed the trajectory of his life. And that's also, like, weird to think of introspectively.
That is.
It's very strange.
Like,
and again, I try to make sense of it, and I can't necessarily.
no, but like I said, it's hopefully by having talking to you about this that people listen and they'll say, I'll jump in, because like we were talking in the earlier parts of this podcast, we were talking about, I kind of put myself in these situations now because I think there's too many people that'll pull out their phone and video it, but they won't save
Yeah.
anybody. And not that I hope to be in that situation, but it's kind of like archery in the aspect that I visualize the shot.
Sure. Yeah.
And I feel like if you visualize something, because you had the experience in the Coast Guard,
Yeah.
I mean, of knowing what to do, but I visualize things like, what would I do in this situation?
And of stubbornness not to stop. I
Yeah.
think for
Oh,
that
that
logic.
is achievement. Because I look.
I think that's like stubbornness. And also, I'm like, oh, well, what are we going to do? Just all sit around and, like, I was like, this is the only thing that I can do for you right now, is just make an attempt. That is the only thing that I can do to try and provide something for you. And it's a lot of stubbornness, I think, too.
Well, I took. I mean, I took first aid classes
Uh-huh.
for things, and we did it for 2 minutes, and I was tired. I can't
Oh,
imagine 20 minutes.
seriously, days after, I had muscles that I didn't even know I had. You think that with archery, when
Yeah.
you're pulling back, you work muscles that you didn't know you have. That's another form of, I suppose, physical exertion that I was like, oh, the adrenaline dump, the physicality of it. I didn't go back out for the rest of my hunt after that, unfortunately. So because I think it was just physical, like, exhaustion as well from being part of that I thought, oh, part of me now, kind of coming full circle, thinks that maybe it would have been really good for me to go out and have some solitude in the mountains and reflection. But I think at that time, I didn't think that was right for me, and I wanted to kind of be at home, and that's fine. I think now maybe I would potentially run to the mountains for some of that solitude and ability to kind of think. And but yeah, there's something special about the mountains, and I think that it's therapeutic now for me to be able to. I mean, this year for opening of the season, wouldn't you believe it? I drew a tag for the exact same place. And I really was like, oh, shoot. I struggled with, like, am I going to want to even go out there? Is it going to be trouble for me to, like, drive past that reservoir and see it? But no, it was great. I had a great time out there. It wasn't very successful, but it was really special to kind of come full circle and actually get up in those mountains that I didn't get to explore the year prior because I just wasn't in a place that I thought was going to be right.
Because it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting because my mom died in October last year. And it's funny because I was there when she died. And then we did some funeral stuff. I mean, preparing for the funeral. Sure. And then I left. And as soon as I got home, I climbed Crow Peak. It was dead. It was dark.
Yeah.
And I climbed. Sorry about this.
No,
I just am this emotional person, I guess. But
I feel you.
But I got home. I said, Cindy, I got to go do this. And I did. And that's when I yelled at God or whomever.
Yeah.
And Bella and I had this little conversation, but it was one of those things that I needed to do just for the solace.
Sure.
To ask questions. And
Did you get answers?
I think we're having a podcast now.
Yeah.
And I think the positivity that comes out of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I look at things, I'm still a year and a half later, but you know what I mean? I climbed the mountain. It happened to be a full moon that night. And
Mm-hmm.
then well, it'd been like 6, 7 months later,
Mm-hmm.
I'm climbing again with
Yeah.
Ears and Ashley and those. And Ashley got the picture of me on Crow Peak, and
Mm-hmm.
Ears tells me your mom's watching you and proud of you. And
That's special.
that was special, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they knew that. I mean, I got home and it was one of those things I said, and she said, go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the solitude of the mountains.
Sure. As it comes back to like that quote, the mountains are calling and I must go. Like
Yes.
that's what I think when you're saying that you were drawn to it to kind of go through that healing and moment. And I think that that's something I found from the mountains, that I love being up there. There's
And
something special.
it's funny because, I mean, we can go to the mountains and hunting and not be successful
Mm-hmm.
and still get fulfilled.
Oh, 100%. I think back to some of the hiking, I call it hiking rather than hunting because, man, I put in the miles and some elevation over nasty country this year. Unfortunately, my unit, it turns out, had a very high winter kill off,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really evident. Um, and it's some serious type 2 fun. I think some of these, like,
Mm-hmm.
6 miles through like knee deep snow and freezing cold, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing this for? Like, this is kind of like a suffer fest. But then you get out to somewhere where you're 6, 7, 8 miles back in the back country. You've not seen any trash, which I think is so special because the mountains, I think it's great in Salt Lake. Like, they're so accessible for people. And I love that. And I want people to experience that. But humans are trash and they just leave a footprint. You know what I mean? Like some
Oh,
of
I
these trail and
know.
you just, I'll like hike out. And by the end of it, I have a pack full of like trash that I'm picking up. So some of these hikes, again, hikes with my very expensive gear in the mountains, not seeing much. There was no evidence of humans back there. I'm like, man, this is so special. Like how few people, I'm not arrogant enough to think I'm the only one who's hiked out there. Um, but how few people have put in the effort in a world where immediacy and convenience is prioritized now to take a whole 10 hours of your day to hike way back in there. Man, you come up to this area called Hell's Kitchen. We got up on this ridge. I think we'd started at 7,000 feet. We got up to 10 and a half, and the wind is whipping and it's freezing cold. But you just look over this whole valley that so few people get to see, and there's bald eagles flying through the trees. I was like, wow, that's so special. Like all of this time I thought it was an absolute suffer fest, but there's something about it that, again, you find those moments and the positivity in it, and you're like, wow, this is actually really special.
And like, I mean, I put on that there's no sunrises. I mean, no sunrise is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I'm out there. Sometimes some of them are sufferfest and some of them
Mm-hmm.
aren't, but they all fulfill you.
Sure.
And I mean, it's like it's just one of those things that I look at myself and I breathe in like in the morning when it's
Mm-hmm.
cold out and you breathe in that fresh, cool, cold,
Mm-hmm.
whatever time of the year you're out there, fresh
Mm-hmm.
air. You see my love is like the cotton candy colors that come out
Yes.
in that
Mm-hmm.
when the sun is
It's just
not even
peeking
up yet,
over. Yeah.
and you got the clouds above you.
Mm-hmm.
But those things, I'm saying, how many people have seen this stuff, and how many people are right now,
Mm-hmm.
and how many people have been to these places? I've been to places like were mountain men here, or
Mm-hmm.
what Indians, or whatever else was
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's funny. We talk about also this like the spiritual healing,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I don't think I've ever told you this,
Mm.
but the shadow play stuff
Mhm.
after like my mom dying, that kept me alive because I'm not really alive, but it kept my spirit alive because
Sure.
I'm going to post this shadow for Fiona
Mhm.
because I see this right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those are the cool things in life that with the friends you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
So now, how do you like? How don't you die rusty now? How do you keep moving? And what else do you have on your docket?
Oh, well, I'm living in Salt Lake, but I'm actually relocating to Bozeman, Montana, coming up here pretty soon. It's funny. I've been manifesting. I'm a big believer in manifestation. I've mentioned it a few times. I did that with Nike, and I've been saying I wanted to live in Montana for a number of years now. And a job opportunity came up recently that's having me move out there. So I'm thrilled about that. So I'm excited for maybe a little less winters in Montana. I hear they were a little rough last year, but luckily I like the snow. I get a kick out of it. I'm from Auckland in New Zealand where we didn't get snow, so I'm still a big kid when it snows. I get excited. So moving to Montana. You know, we mentioned shadow play.
Yep.
And that was something that I started doing in COVID. Like during COVID when we were kind of locked down and feeling a little isolated. And one of the things that I do is I'd at least walk my dog, like get out, and it was just us. And I started to like realize that like I was hanging my head quite a bit. You know, you get a bit down. I couldn't go home. I didn't see my family in 3 years during COVID. I'd always had this thought that, oh, I've done the flight between New Zealand and America so many times. It's a 12-hour flight. It's super easy. But then all of a sudden, like if anything happened, I could get home. All of a sudden COVID hits and the world changes, and I get told you can't see your family for 3 years. I watched 2 nephews and a niece be born and grow up through FaceTime. Like, man, I feel very isolated. Like for the first time in my life, I feel truly isolated. So that was tough. And I realized as I was walking, I was like, man, I'm like hanging my head a lot. Like I'm down. I'm very down. And I kind of got a kick out of seeing that you can look down and then you see your shadow, but how cool it is that your shadow is so tall. And like was with my dog. And I'm like, man, sometimes there's something kind of cool about realizing by looking down that actually you're like really tall. Which sounds so cliche, and I can't believe I'm even saying it. But at the time, like that was something very meaningful for me. And I was like, yeah, things aren't that bad. Like, have your self-confidence. You're a good person. You know what I mean? Like, you have a lot going for you. Yes, it's really tough times and it's isolating, but like you're taller than you think. You know? And that, as I said, it's very cliche, but that worked for me. So I started playing this game of like shadow play. Every day I go out and like in a different area and like different kind of like scenarios. And people, I think you might have been one of the first people to start joining in, like start doing it back and like hashtag shadow play. And now I have like a group, there's maybe like 15, 20 people who every now and then I joke, I'm like, welcome to the game, because they'll post a shadow. They've seen mine and then they're like, hey, this is for you. And this is like a cool shadow or a cool moment. And I think that's really special. Again, in a time when most of these people are all geographically separated, but there's like this fun little connection through social media and this like little, I call it a game, where you're just taking stock and taking a moment to like look around you or like look at your shadow and just have fun. Like, am I out doing an adventure? Am I out in the mountains? Like, there's some cool like vista that like a shadow showing up on. So that's how it started for me. And it's shadow hunting. And now my friend Jericho Denman, watch him. He does very cool things. His hashtag is live a great story. And he really does. And of course he jumps out of planes. He's a big skydiver. So he's now taken the game to a whole nother level and will tag me in shadow hunting from like a parachute above. And
I've seen him.
Like, well, shoot, you just beat me at my own game. I can't do that. But no, it's fun.
It is. You know, here's a funny story. About shadow play is Cindy and I went to New Orleans to pick up her daughter, and we drove her back to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and this and that, and we're flying into New Orleans, and I'm looking out. I do not know how my luck, because we didn't pick seats. But I'm seemingly always over the wing. I mean, so I can't see a doggone thing. So we weren't over the wing, and I'm looking out the window, and I saw the shadow of the plane. And I'm trying to get my phone out so I could take the picture, so I can post it to tag you. And I didn't get it, and I'm going, oh, that was a cool picture. Now I don't have it. But it's interesting that those things pop up in your head.
For sure, and I think it helps like pull you out of like whatever you're going in the moment. Like again, we're in this like whole cycle of like always rushing or on to the next thing, and this game for me, and like how do you not digest it, like those are moments where it reminds me to take pause and take stock of what's around me and enjoy the little things around me and surround, like you said, that you're like, oh dang, I see a shadow. I mean, a shadow, but man, it brings me so much joy. You know what I mean? So like I think finding little things like that. again, Jericho and I have a new one where full length mirror selfies in the wild is the new one you can watch out. So again, any like reflections and things.
Yep.
I think it's kind of fun. He lives in Florida. I'm in Utah.
Mhm.
I have a friend in Tahoe, Aurora, who plays the game, and it's
Mhm.
just kind of a fun little connection to see other people. It be meaningful for them to take a moment of pause and see something like just cool or positive in day to day, which you might otherwise just skip over.
And we're taking stock in the day, like you said.
Mhm.
You see things every day, but
Yeah.
if you're stopping and smelling the roses per se,
It's literally like a slightly evolved version of stopping to
it
smell the
is.
roses.
Except
Stopping to check out the shadow.
because I got my dad into it too. He's done
Cool.
that, but he hasn't tagged you. But he
Mhm.
because I'm when I go back to visit him and stuff, he gets up at and goes for his walk in the morning, and I see that shadow, and I'm taking pictures
Cool.
of it, and I try to tag him, and now he's taking pictures of shadows and doing stuff like that
Heck
too.
yeah.
So that
I
is
think that's so cool.
you've brought new life to all kinds of things.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you.
So my I'm gonna let you go here because I know you're a busy gal.
Oh.
I,
I mean,
I
yeah, I've enjoyed the chat. I don't even know how long we've been talking,
I
but
don't
it's
either.
been easy.
Yeah, well,
It's
it's been
been
a little.
fun.
Yeah, it's funny because in a in well in an hour here, Frank and I are going to go jump off the stratosphere.
Frank's going too.
Frank is going to.
I'd be jealous if I didn't have a fear of heights, but I love that for you guys.
All
Yeah, I
right.
love that for you guys.
So the last question that I want to ask is is what is the good life to you?
It's interesting. You posed that question earlier, and I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of been noodling on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting how you can go through different cycles of your life as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think back to like when I was in college, I thought like, the yardstick for success was, you own a home before you're 30. This is in New Zealand. You own a home by a certain age. You start, it's the white picket fence. And in New Zealand, everyone's got like the boat because we're an island, boat, 2 cars, house, that's the good life and a great job. And I think I once upon a time subscribed to that. But I think as I get older and go through different stages of my life, that has shifted dramatically. Once upon a time, I wanted to be. Uh, I'm still very goal oriented. Don't get me wrong.
No, yeah.
I'm my hardest critic, and I'm
Well,
very driven.
I hear you.
Um,
I see it too.
yeah, but I think once upon a time, like I wanted to be in an office, and I wanted to be a banker, and I was going to do this and that. And now I can't imagine anything worse than being beholden to that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think the good life is I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm very much a work in progress about balance.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm very driven, and I'm super stoked for this new role with Duckworth,
Mm-hmm.
Montana Wool Company, which is
Mm.
funny that a Kiwi kid, where wool comes from, it's come full circle to now working in America for a wool company. The irony is not lost. But I'm super excited, honestly, about telling stories. I think that's something that I've learned that I really enjoy. And this company has a really phenomenal story to tell, and I'm very excited to like bring some of that creativity that excites me to telling their story, and obviously growing the business, which I'm very passionate about. But it's having the balance. And I think living in Montana and Utah and back in New Zealand is the proximity to the outdoors, and being able to, work a very hard day, but go out and play just as hard. And by that is scaling a 3,000-foot mountain or doing something stupid to most people. But like for me, that's the good life is getting out with my dog, enjoying the mountains, having probably a slightly smaller social circle than I ever have before. But as you said, like just great quality, good humans. I don't need to go out every night like I used to love going out and like burning the candle at both ends and
Mm-hmm.
like work hard, play hard. I think it's having a very good, solid group of people. I think that our total archery friends and some of the friends that we have here, like we see each other a couple times a year at some of these events, and you could pick up where you left off as if no time has gone by. And I think those kind of relationships are very special when you find folks like that. You and I, we will not see each other, and you pick up
Yeah, I mean,
as if no time has passed.
we went to the after party last night, or that party last night,
Mhm.
and we sat down and had a beer and we chatted,
Yeah.
and we just like we we'd been apart.
Correct.
But and it's funny that you bring those people up that are this little
In
circle,
this
and
little ecosystem that we have.
and I'm so happy that you're in it.
Yeah,
You know what I
I'm
mean?
thrilled to be in it.
And it's interesting to me because even though we might not see each other, like if any of us made one phone call to any of us, they're always there for that person.
Oh, you drop everything.
You know what I mean?
Good humans.
That is exactly
And
what
I
it's
think
about.
that's like that. Don't die goes back to don't die rusty. It's also about like I think it's quality over quantity is
Mhm.
something I've learned in all aspects, whether that be like some sort of outdoor adventure or excursion. It's the people and just having like a really good balance. And I just love the outdoors. And again, my mom looks and she's like, wait, you're hiking the Grand Canyon for 5 days with only dehydrated food, like no showers? That sounds awful. It was like, that sounds like my type of fun.
Yeah, that
That's
is
my
just awesome.
type of fun, and so I think it's a mix of that, and I think I've learned that you don't need as much as you once upon a time thought you did, or that society tells you you need to have to be successful and live a good life. Like it's a lot more pared down than what we're made to think.
It is, I mean, I've tried to be a little more simpler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd rather, for me personally,
Sure.
it's the memories over material things.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
and we both have high tech and expensive gear,
Mm-hmm.
but I look at that high tech and expensive gear, it gets us to where we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if that can help, I mean, yes, you could wear jeans and all that stuff, but it doesn't. I want to stay alive too.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I don't want to die rusty because I want to keep on making these
Uh-huh.
memories,
Uh-huh.
and to see the things that we see, but I don't need all that stuff at home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live for a house payment. I want to live for adventure.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
love that.
live for those memories because that's what I'm taking with me.
Mm-hmm.
That is always what I'll be taking with me. So the stories I can have with you, or the stories I can have with whoever else,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's that tight knit group.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends, but there's those friends that are like
Mm-hmm.
there,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's amazing that, and I, I
And it's
don't know.
funny that the outdoors, it's all a love and appreciation for like experience that brings those people together. I think that is
Yeah.
like the initial common ground. There's obviously a lot more common ground beyond that, but I think that's kind of cool that that was like the initial common ground that brings those folks together.
Yes, and for us, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we can. It's interesting because you sneak in like a ninja into the room, and I could have had my throat slit, but thank God you weren't a serial killer.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm all
then
about saving lives.
and
That's
then
what.
and then Ashley gets up in the morning and starts her getting ready, and then
Mm-hmm.
everybody starts getting ready, and
Pop up.
you pop up and come with us, and it's funny because we're getting up before light,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing the sunrise up there
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have that cool picture as the sun's rising
Magnificent.
by the big sky sign up on top,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's that tight knit group that in those situations we might burn kind of the candle at both ends because we
Sure.
know
It's
it's
so
2
short
days.
time that we get together, so we're like, we got to maximize it, and then you're
Yes.
exhausted after the fact, but it's so worth it.
And then we walk down the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk to somebody, I talk to somebody, then we talk to somebody else, and
Mm-hmm.
the conversations just never, it's not an awkward situation. Like
Sure.
we go from target to target to target, and I'll talk to Fiona at this target, and
Mm-hmm.
then we'll talk to Ashley or Jesse or whoever,
At
is
the
it with
next,
us,
yeah.
and then we all get together, and then I hate to say it that I'm that guy, but I'm that guy that'll do something stupid, and then
Mm-hmm.
then we'll all get back together again. And you know what
Yeah.
I mean. It's interesting that we have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
and we know what it is.
Yeah.
That's the problem, I think, today is we don't know what that connection is till too late
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And I think we all know that these are good people. You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't ever want to be that person that wishes they did. I want to be the person that did.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I know we're trying to end, but I'll end on this.
Yeah.
Is that I think I've always tried to maximize, and my dad will attest to that. He's like, I don't know how you fit so much into your life and into your day. And I guess I've always just tried to overachieve in everything that I do, and that includes fitting the most into every day. Um, But I often took part in some experiences. Like I would go out to like some islands on my lunch break because I had a jet ski. And again, when you're in New Zealand, you have the proximity to do some pretty rad things.
Yeah.
But I think you can find those anywhere. And people would say, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to do this. Oh, you're so lucky." I was like, I am. And don't get me wrong, I am so fortunate to have had the upbringing that I've had to afford me the, I suppose, the work ethic to instill in me to work hard for a lot of the opportunities that I get and figure out how to maximize my day. But man, you could do it too. I'm not like being given anything on like a platter per se. I worked hard. I'll get to work early. I have a not that expensive of a jet ski. You can get one pretty cheap. And I was like, it's
Hmm.
fun to zip around. We have the islands right there. I'm going to make the most of every day. I'm going to take my lunch over to that island and eat lunch on that island. Be like, you're so lucky. It's like, you can do it too. Maybe I'm just silly enough to try and figure out how to do it. But, I think you can make the most of any opportunity that you're given. And sometimes if you just have a crazy idea, you can just figure out how to do it. And I think that's been maybe a good trait and a slightly like reckless trait, if some have told me. I don't think it's reckless, but it's just making the most of like the opportunities and working hard and getting out and enjoying it. And even if it sounds as obnoxious of going over to a private island for lunch,
No,
you could do it too.
it's the choices you make. It's
Yeah.
funny because you say that, and earlier this week, one of my coworkers said, "How do you hunt out of state?" I said,
Mhm.
"How many packs of cigarettes do you smoke?"
Mhm.
And I said, it's the choices you make.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you have to smoke those cigarettes. You're not telling me I have to go hunt or do whatever I want to do, but it's my choice to go on adventures. Your choice to smoke that cigarette.
It's your choice how to spend your equity, and that is like time, money, resources. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
And that's like, it's just the choice. Yeah, I like that actually. That's probably a better way that I could have explained it, is the choices that you make. All of these things are afforded to us. It's public land, it's public ocean. Like you can get out there if you want. Like we're so lucky that we can.
It-
I've just figured out a way to do it.
And it's the choices of surrounding yourself with good people.
Mhm.
And it's all these choices. So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for having this conversation with me. I feel privileged, you know what I mean?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's my first ever podcast, so I've enjoyed the conversation.
And
And
I
it's
love
always
the
good conversation.
Yes.
That's the good thing is, like you said, you can not be around each other for a long time, and yet the conversation flows as if no time has gone by.
Exactly. And you can check us out on IG, Don't Die Rusty, Facebook, Don't Die Rusty, the YouTube channel, Don't Die Rusty. So keep chasing your dreams and don't die rusty. In the end, we all know don't die
Don't
rusty.
die rusty. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Don't Die Rusty podcast with your hosts, Rick Hanson and Ricky Brule. The Don't Die Rusty podcast is written and produced by Rick Hanson and Ricky Brule. You can find us on Instagram and on Facebook at Don't Die Rusty. You can rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You might find your review read on a future episode. Got a question for the Ricks? Send us an email at don'tdierusty@gmail.com. It too could be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Don't Die Rusty podcast wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.